Yorgos Lanthimos has had a myriad of Oscar-winning and critically acclaimed films, from the wonderfully irreverent drama, romance, The Favorite, the creepy, weird, and uncomfortable Killing of a Sacred Deer, and the creepy, weird, and uncomfortable Alps. But there was one movie, besides his debut, that I hadn't seen up until very recently, and it may be one of the only ones from him I'm incredibly mixed on, and that is Dogtooth.
Ο αδερφός σας πέθανε. Ένα πλάσμα σαν αυτό που εισέβαλε σήμερα στον κήπο τον διαμέλισε.
This movie is going out of its way to make you uncomfortable, and it does succeed at that. At times during this movie, I was deeply unsettled and uncomfortable with what I was watching, which again seems to be the point, so it does its job, and in that way it's great. It excels in that department. It absolutely nails that aspect of what it's going for. But this is a movie that is about a family unit at the heart of it. It's about a family that is keeping its children hostage, essentially. These three kids have grown up in complete and utter isolation in this house that is ruled almost by a tyrannical, manipulative father who controls what they say, controls basically what they think, consume, and do on a daily basis. He controls every aspect of their lives for reasons that aren't super clear, but that's sort of why this movie is beloved, because it doesn't give you answers, and I did like that aspect of it. I think this movie does a really good job of showing rather than telling, which I always prefer, and there isn't a whole lot that's spelled out. Even when you find out what the main story is, 45 minutes of it have gone by and it's only an hour and a half long. A lot of these kids, you kind of have to infer a lot of their upbringing to get to where they are, because they're just not normal in any way, but neither is this family dynamic. Watching this father have such a tight grip on them was deeply unsettling, and in that way it is actually very compelling, and seeing how he is manipulating everyone was fascinating to me. And then thinking about it after it ended, how these children, essentially, who are adults but have like children brains, and they just don't know how to do anything. And thinking about that after this ended was sort of the best thing that I can say for it, is that it leaves you with a lot to think about. You look at this and you go, man, these kids, they are grown up basically being held hostage without them knowing it, and their father is telling them words and giving them completely wrong meanings of the word, but they just don't know better, so they take his word for it because he is the leader of the house. Their videos that they watch, they're not movies, really. They're just home videos. They do these really trivial, silly, childlike games to keep their entertainment.
Ένα παιδί είναι έτοιμο να φύγει από το σπίτι του όταν
πέσει ο δεξιός κοινόδοντας.
μόνο τότε ο οργανισμός είναι έτοιμος να αντιμετωπίσει όλους τους κινδύνους που παραφυλάνε.
Feel for these children that are under the thumb of this father, and as the movie goes on, it's clear that that's sort of the focus of it, is the kids and their desperate need to understand what's going on. But again, it doesn't fully explain that. Things sort of just happen, and that is one of my issues with it. A lot of this feels like scene after scene of just things happening without a whole lot of reasoning behind it or motive driving it. That's one of my biggest issues with it. There's a lot of fun and clever and interesting scenes in this, which is another thing that I've found very interesting, is its sense of humor, which we can talk about in a minute. But that's one thing I really didn't care for. It doesn't have a lot of oomph to the story. And for me, I really do like a movie that has a narrative, a driving narrative. That's something I really want out of a movie. I do like interesting characters, but I do prefer a clear narrative that the characters are driving forward. That's what I like, and it doesn't really feel like that here. There's literally just scenes that kind of happen. It's like Yorgos had a bunch of ideas in this general story that he kind of just smashed together. It's like, oh, you have one scene where these three kids are swimming in the pool and one of them is pretending to be a shark. And then you have a scene where they're fighting over a fallen airplane. And then you have a scene where a cat shows up in their backyard and they've never seen one before, so what do? It's a lot of that. It's a lot of, they've never seen or done this before, so let's see how they handle it. And that is interesting on its own, but the psychology, without that dynamic, it's just, there's nothing really else going on that I latched onto. With a lot of Yorgos movies, Killing of a Sacred Deer being a prime example, you have some subtext. You have a very religious subtext in that movie with a clear narrative and clear motives for the characters. And that's why I love that movie. It has so much going on and so much to rewatch. Here, it's like just scenes. It's just scenes that happen, and then the next scene happens, and then the next one happens. And the characters are just not that compelling either. Since they've grown up in this horrible situation, they all sort of have a samey feel to them. The parents of this family have tried so hard to instill something in their children, to raise them right, or whatever their perception of right is, protecting them from the world. So they all have turned out really numb, and that's why this kind of comes across incredibly cold. The whole movie is very cold and very clinical feeling, and while on paper I think that could work, there just isn't a heart to it. There isn't something that's warm or inviting, and that's by design, and I get it, that's by design, but there just isn't anything to it that makes me latch on to anybody. It's so crushing. It's soul crushing at times. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of weird slapstick, lighthearted comedy that is like a breath of fresh air whenever it happens, and it's really funny. At times, the movie is really funny. It's so awkward and uncomfortable that it becomes funny, but then there's times when it's just so awkward and uncomfortable that you want to leave. You just don't want to watch it anymore.
Εύχομαι όταν κάνεις παιδιά να πάρουν τα λάθος ερεθίσματα και να δημιουργήσουν το λάθος χαρακτήρα. Πραγματικά σου το εύχομαι.
The characters are so numb to the point of me just being like, I don't care about them. You have empathy for them because of the situation, but you watch them in scene after scene just being very cold. And they don't understand the world and they don't know what's right or wrong. So you have characters that feel okay with taking a knife and cutting their own brother. And there is a character, I think named Christina, who comes into the household and she's basically a prostitute for the son of the family for reasons you don't understand or aren't explained. And then she uses not only the son, but she uses the oldest daughter, and she gives her like a headband for her to lick her. And it's really kind of gross and uncomfortable for, you know, reasons. For good reasons, it's uncomfortable. But they bring the same energy to that as they do to, you know, fighting over a toy airplane. And that's the most interesting stuff. It just doesn't amount to a whole lot.
Εύχομαι όταν κάνεις παιδιά να πάρουν τα λάθος ερεθίσματα και να δημιουργήσουν το λάθος χαρακτήρα. Πραγματικά σου το εύχομαι.
The characters here range from numb and kind of uninteresting with the kids to overly kind of evil with the main father, to the point where I just didn't like anybody. And the story here is set mostly in one location with scene after scene happening, showing these characters how disconnected they are from the world. And it just ended up feeling like ideas that were strung together with very flimsy motivation, So at the end of the day, it's one of those movies that I think I appreciate more than I like it. Because it looks nice, it's shot generally pretty well, and from what I understand, they shot it just on one camera with one lens. So for a low-budget movie to look this good is very impressive. It is with those big things, though, that I have issues, to the point where I don't want to watch it again. The characters, the story, the motivations for those things, they're just not clear enough for me to be invested. It is so ambiguous at points where even I, who love ambiguous things, was just like, I'm not getting anything. I'm just not getting anything. I see these characters and I just don't know why they're doing the things they're doing, and it is mildly frustrating at times. There are spots where I really enjoyed this, and I can see why people love this movie so much, because so many people absolutely love it. There is really weird things in this that are really unique and quirky and make it so it stands out in that regard. There is really nothing like this movie, and in that way I can recommend it. It is surreal, it's gross, it's creepy, it's very unique, but I'm just not sure if there is enough there to make me want to rewatch it or highly recommend it. It's in that weird gray area where I can say it's good, but I can't say it's great, personally. So, yeah, if you haven't seen it, it might be worth checking out if you want some really soul-crushing, depressing, feel-bad movie. Then this is it, and you may love it, like so many people do. Or you may come out of it just completely disconnected from everything, like I did. So, yeah, I mean, check it out.